She wore white to my wedding and smiled while the family whispered that I was the disgrace. That was the moment I knew they hadn't just turned their backs on me. They had buried me. Hi, I'm Calla Winter. And 5 years ago, my family cut me out of the legacy they built on lies, then acted like I never existed. Have you ever stood in a room full of people who knew your name and still chose to forget you? If your own family erased you, would you forgive, or would you burn it all down? Let's go back to the night I got the invitation that changed everything. Who wears a white wedding gown to someone else's wedding? The question wasn't whispered. It was sharp, clean, loud enough to slice through the buzz of string quartet music and champagne chatter. And it came from a woman I didn't even know, one of the guests on my husband's side. I didn't turn toward her. I couldn't, because I was already staring at the answer. Sabine, my sister, standing at the top of the grand marble staircase like some twisted debutante queen, a vision in shimmering white. Not ivory, not cream, wedding white. The kind that only belongs to one woman in the room, and it damn sure wasn't her. My breath caught in my throat, but I kept walking down the aisle, steady, slow, each step echoing louder than the last. Gasps rippled around me like shockwaves. Someone coughed. A camera clicked. I didn't blink, didn't let it show. My hand tightened around my bouquet until the stems bit into my palm. She smiled at me. God, that smile. As if this was a joke between sisters. As if this was charming. As if she hadn't just declared war in front of Vogue, Charleston High Society, and 300 guests, all dressed in blush and champagne tones except her. White. Floor length. Backless. Hand beaded with pearls. Veil included. I glanced toward the Vogue photographer stationed just off to the side. He looked confused. He looked like he didn't know which one of us to shoot. That was the plan, wasn't it? She'd won for a moment, because the moment was hers. But only for now. By the time I reached the altar, I was already rearranging the narrative in my head. Already filing this away not as humiliation, but as evidence. Let the world see what I've seen for years. Let them know who Sabine Winter really is. My fingers brushed against the Lady Justice pendant at my neck, the one they hadn't expected me to wear today. My quiet reminder. My silent sword. Sabine took her seat in the front row with the smug grace of a villain who thought she'd gotten away with it. Loretta, our mother, leaned in and whispered something to her. Both of them laughed. They thought I wouldn't react. They thought I'd keep the peace. Because that's what I always did. But not today. I didn't need to turn to hear it. The breathless hush, the flicker of confusion. The Vogue photographer actually lowered his camera. His head tilted slightly, clearly unsure whether to pan left or right. To her or me. Around us, the whispers bloomed like wrought beneath velvet. Is she the bride? No, she's the sister. She wore white? That's ballsy. Even the quartet missed a note, the violin screeching just slightly before correcting. The sound echoed through the hall, delicate but jarring, like porcelain cracking behind silk drapes. A few steps behind me, a little girl in a lavender dress tugged on her mother's sleeve and pointed, wide-eyed. Is she the princess? She asked, nodding toward Sabine. Her mother, flustered, grabbed her hand and quickly turned her away. She's just a guest, honey. The moment slid like ice down my spine. And there it was, just off to the right of the entrance arch, near the elaborate photo wall of family portraits, our father's framed picture. His favorite smile, captured a year before he died. But the frame was off-center, like someone had nudged it, perhaps even intentionally turned it a few inches out of focus. Easy to overlook. Easier to forget. I stopped for just a beat, just long enough to press my palm to the Lady Justice charm hidden beneath the neckline of my dress. Not for the cameras. Not for the crowd.
For me. For him.
Across the aisle, Loretta caught my gaze. Her expression was a cocktail of false surprise and badly staged innocence. She leaned toward Sabine and whispered something through her teeth. Sabine gave a barely perceptible shrug, her smirk never leaving. They were in on it together. Of course they were. Then came the flash, the bright pop of light that seared directly into my eyes. Sabine turned slightly to angle her shoulder toward the camera, veil floating behind her like a halo in motion. She looked luminous, until you saw the rot in the light. That was the moment I made the decision not to fight her, not to cry, but to let her have the whole spotlight, so the whole world could finally see her burn in it. Later that evening, during cocktail hour, I caught up with Raina near the bar. Her jaw was tight. "You want me to drag her by the veil?" she asked, voice low, eyes scanning the crowd.
"Not yet," I said.
"Let her enjoy it. The higher she climbs, the harder she'll fall." Raina sipped her drink. She said to a photographer that she had to save the aesthetic. "Apparently, your stylist didn't understand the color palette." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Of course she did. I already contacted Delaney from Vogue," Raina added. "They're not happy. The editor's note won't be kind." "Good," I said, brushing imaginary dust off my sleeve. "Make sure they spell her name right." By midnight, the online headline read, "Wedding of the Year, hijacked by the tacky guest in white. Photo included." Her face turned slightly blurred, but unmistakable. Sabine's response? She reposted the article and captioned it. "They said tacky, but I say timeless. Wait till they see what I wear next." I stared at the screen and felt the fire crawl back into my chest. I knew that tone, that threat wrapped in rhinestones. Sabine wasn't done. She thought this was round one of a fashion feud. She didn't know she'd just declared open war. Back at my apartment, the city lights cast long shadows across the hardwood floors. My wedding dress hung in the corner, like a ghost of what the day could have been. I poured a drink.
Neat.
No ice. No illusions. The headlines buzzed on my phone. Raina had already scheduled an exclusive interview with Vogue to clarify the misunderstanding. I knew what she really meant, a chance to burn the whole narrative down and rebuild it my way. Then, as I scrolled through photos from the day, one stopped me cold. It wasn't the ceremony. It wasn't the dress. It was a candid shot.
Of me.
Standing on the steps of the venue, head high, veil trailing behind me like a flag. Sabine blurred in the background. A guest had captioned it, "Elegance outshines envy." I saved the photo, made it my lock screen. Then I turned off my phone and whispered to the dark. "She wants a war dressed in white? Then we do it in full color." Funny how the people who buried you forget you're still breathing. I hadn't stepped inside Shah Rousseau in over 6 years, and the moment I walked through its polished brass doors, the air hit me like a memory I hadn't asked for. White linens. Crystal chandeliers. That faint blend of overpriced truffle oil and desperation to be seen. It was exactly as I remembered. Too elegant, too cold, too obsessed with appearances. Like my mother. She sat at a corner table near the window, back straight, hands folded delicately around a glass of wine she hadn't touched. Her hair was pinned into one of those styles that took 3 hours to look effortlessly graceful, and her diamond earrings sparkled like guilt disguised as wealth. I approached with measured steps, heels tapping a rhythm of disdain on the marble floor. "Odessa," she said when she saw me. I didn't correct her. Let her cling to the name she'd helped erase. Let her pretend things hadn't changed. I slid into the seat opposite her without a word. The server came. She ordered a salad she wouldn't eat. I asked for black coffee. No sugar. Small talk filled the space between us like smoke. Weather, Charleston's skyline, renovations at the foundation headquarters. None of it mattered. None of it touched the gaping wound between us. She finally set her fork down with a soft clink and looked at me like a confession waiting to spill. "I owe you an apology," she whispered. I didn't blink. I waited. "Jameson," she began, already unraveling. "He told everyone you'd had a breakdown. That you left because you couldn't handle the pressure. I didn't stop him." My jaw clenched, but I said nothing. Let her twist. I thought if we didn't talk about it, maybe it would go away. Maybe people would forget. They did. I cut in. Because you helped them forget. The restaurant's chatter dimmed. Somewhere nearby, a glass was set too hard against a table. A fork scraped porcelain. I didn't turn toward it, but I could feel eyes shifting in our direction. She took a shaky breath and reached into her purse. "I kept this," she said. Her voice cracked, not from volume, but from weight. What she placed on the table made my stomach tighten. A small velvet box. Slowly, I opened it. Inside was the Lady Justice pendant. The one my father had promised me after I passed the bar. The one that disappeared the day I left. "It's yours," she said, barely above a whisper. It always was. I didn't thank her. I didn't smile. I took it, opened my blazer, and clipped it over my heart where it belonged. But I didn't stand. Not yet. Instead, I looked her dead in the eyes. "Do you remember Thanksgiving?" I asked. My voice was steady, low, and cold. She blinked. "Once. Twice." The night Jameson raised his glass in front of everyone. "To Odessa," he said, "who traded stethoscopes for subpoenas and dignity for delusion." Remember how they laughed. Her lips trembled. I was standing there with a case file in my purse and cord ink still on my fingers. "And you didn't say a word." "I didn't know what to do," she said quickly, like the words were trying to outrun the shame. "You looked away," I said, "just like you're doing now." Have you ever been hurt more by the silence than by the words? That sharp kind of betrayal, not shouted, but whispered by the ones you trusted most. If you've ever felt abandoned in the quiet, leave a comment number 7 below. Let's see what I do next. Her wine glass trembled as she reached for it. She didn't drink, just held it like a shield. I leaned back slightly and let the silence expand. Let it thicken around us like judgment in a courtroom. All around, I could feel the room shifting. Conversations fading. Cutlery pausing. One server stopped mid-pour. 2 women at the adjacent table pretended to scroll on their phones, but didn't blink once. Finally, I stood. The legs of my chair scraped the floor with just enough noise to make sure no one could ignore it. Her hand jerked. A few drops of wine spilled onto the tablecloth. "They buried me once," I said clearly, letting the words carry. "This time, I'm digging myself out, and I'm bringing the truth with me." I turned and walked away. Not rushed. Measured. My heels hit the marble like a gavel. 1, 2, 3. Eyes followed me. At the door, the maitre d' gave a slight nod. He remembered me. He remembered everything. Outside, the sky had turned the color of steel. Charleston's humidity clung to my skin, but I didn't feel it. I pulled out my phone and opened my messages. "Raina." I typed one line and hit send. "We go full burn. No more mercy." The reply came almost instantly. Locked and loaded. "Let's rewrite the family legacy." As I walked back toward my car, I passed the edge of King Street and caught a glimpse of the Marin Legal Institute's massive billboard, Jameson's grinning face plastered across it. "Future of Justice," it read. Not for long. Back at my apartment, I opened my mirrored jewelry box. I placed the pendant inside, next to the original copy of my judicial appointment letter and a photo of me and my father on the day I got sworn in. They sat there like a promise. A warning. The silence they gave me will become the sentence that defines them, and I would be the one to deliver it. If they can't kill you in silence, they'll try to drown you in noise. I wasn't surprised when the first article dropped. What surprised me was how fast they moved. Less than 48 hours after the wedding, I woke up to 5 missed calls from Raina, 2 from an unknown Atlanta number, and 1 notification I hadn't seen in years, a Reddit thread with my name in the title. I tapped. Is Judge Calla Winter mentally stable? That was the header. Below it, unverified claims, screenshots with cropped timestamps, and a blurry photo of me from law school, hair messy, eyes red from an all-nighter captioned, alleged breakdown. Roommate confirms erratic behavior. I scrolled, heart steady, mind already dissecting. They weren't here to tell the truth. They were here to rewrite it. That's when the second article hit. Then the third. Tabloids I hadn't thought about since high school. Buzz pages. Blogger opinion pieces. All of them quoting sources close to the family. One even suggested I'd been forced off the bench due to emotional instability and cited anonymous emails from a former classmate. Sabine's fingerprints were all over it. This wasn't her first time using whispers to wound. She just had better PR now. I walked into Raina's office like I owned it. She looked up from 3 monitors, each one showing a different tabloid headline. Well, she said, deadpan. Someone came out swinging. I dropped my coat on the back of her leather armchair. Good. I'm ready to swing back. She spun her chair, pointed to a folder on her desk. You remember that press kit we prepared just in case? I nodded. It's not a just in case anymore. It's now. We worked for hours, no dramatics, no panic. Just precision. I reviewed the files we'd spent weeks assembling. Letters of recommendation from federal judges, my judicial appointment confirmation, awards from housing reform boards, volunteer work with juvenile courts, photos from speaking engagements. Raina had labeled it the truth file. We picked 5 items. 1 official appointment letter, 1 courtroom photo with city leadership, a feature article from Legal Visionaries Monthly, a commendation from the Bar Association, and a headline that read, Judge Winter rules boldly in landmark housing case. Advocates celebrate. That one was important, because it was from the same week Sabine claimed I'd disappeared for mental health reasons. We drafted a post. No hashtags. No anger. Just this. Facts are stubborn things. John Adams. Calla Winter, State Judge. Attached documents. Raina hovered over the publish button, then looked at me. Do you want to be the one to post it? I stared at the screen. At the truth I'd hidden for years. At the face they tried to erase. Yes, I said. Let them read it in my voice. I clicked, and the internet responded like dry leaves meeting fire. The first ping came within seconds. Then another. Then a rapid stream of alerts, so fast Raina had to mute her phone. The screen lit up in waves, mentions, reposts, shares. Lawyers I didn't know tagged me in threads defending my rulings. A tenant I'd helped 4 years ago posted a video testimonial, tears in his eyes, saying, Judge Winter saved my family. I don't care what lies they print. A defense attorney I hadn't spoken to in years went live and said, This is what retaliation looks like. This is what happens when a woman refuses to stay buried. Screenshots flooded the feeds. The hashtag Winter Exposed was hijacked, turned into a stream of support. Within 10 minutes, our post had crossed 100,000 views. Then came the second wave. A short, clipped email from Raina's assistant popped up. Subject, Sabine's team, melting down. Body, Her publicist just threatened to sue 3 outlets for mischaracterizing her quotes. One blog pulled their smear piece already. Raina laughed. That was faster than I expected. And then the best part. Delaney Sparks, features editor at Vogue, DM'd me directly. You want the real cover story now?
Just you.
No distractions. Let's talk. I stared at it for a long moment, then screenshotted it. Sent it to Raina. As the sun dipped over Charleston, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat back in the soft hush of my apartment. The headlines were shifting. So was the power. My phone buzzed again. A text from a woman named Denise Caldwell. You don't remember me, but you helped my daughter in court 2 years ago. She's in college now. Because of you. Thank you for not staying silent. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then Raina called. They tried to drown you in noise, she said. But you dropped a thunderclap. I smiled into the receiver. They should have known better. I write my rulings in ink. And in that moment I knew. I wasn't defending myself anymore. I was setting the stage for war. Every family has skeletons. Some just wear pearls over theirs. Mr. Fenwick's office hadn't changed in 20 years. Same red brick walls, same oil painting of a judge I never recognized, same mahogany desk that looked like it could hold state secrets. Maybe it had. He stood when I walked in, slower than I remembered, but still tall, still precise. Judge Winter, he said, like it was both a greeting and an apology. Calla, I replied. He gestured for me to sit, and when I did, he opened a slim drawer, pulled out a yellowed manila folder, and laid it flat on the desk between us. Your father asked me to keep this sealed unless you ever came back for it, he said. I wish he'd lived long enough to see this day. I opened the folder slowly. Inside were 2 documents. The first, a copy of the original Winter family trust agreement, one I'd never seen before. It clearly named me as primary beneficiary, under the condition that I maintained judicial standing or public legal service. That condition had never been broken. The second, a signed affidavit from an accountant, dated 2 years after I left, stating that Loretta had instructed the family's financial advisor to restructure the trust due to my declining mental fitness and voluntary estrangement. The kicker? My signature was forged at the bottom of the authorization. My throat went dry, but my mind stayed sharp. They erased me on paper, I said, almost to myself. Mr. Fenwick leaned forward. They not only erased you, they shifted your share to Sabine and structured it through shell donations to the Winter Foundation. They knew what they were doing. My fingers tapped the edge of the desk, calculating. This, I said, is fraud. He nodded. And embezzlement. If the Foundation's funds were used personally, which, based on these flagged transactions, they were. He slid another page forward. Credit card records. Private jet usage billed to the Foundation. Jewelry purchases. Event fees labeled as outreach. I closed the folder and met his eyes. It's time to make this public. 3 days later, I walked into the quarterly Winter Foundation Board meeting uninvited. The meeting room inside the Foundation's Charleston headquarters was all glass and stone, with a 20-foot chandelier swinging gently above a massive U-shaped table. The board members, all polished, all quiet, stared as I took my seat at the far end. Sabine sat front and center, in white again, of course, with Loretta at her side. Both froze when they saw me. I didn't smile. Sabine recovered first. You weren't invited, she said sweetly. Neither was fraud, I answered and opened my briefcase. From it, I pulled copies of the original trust, the forged authorization, and Mr. Fenwick's sworn statement. I passed them one by one down the table. Today's agenda is transparency, I said. Let's begin. Loretta's voice trembled. This is a misunderstanding. I agree, I said. You misunderstood how many people were watching. One board member, a silver-haired man in a gray suit, held up the forged document and squinted. This is a felony, he muttered. This isn't just internal politics. This is criminal. Another leaned toward Sabine. You used foundation funds to host a retreat in Aspen? Sabine stammered. It was donor engagement. For whom? The woman snapped. Your stylist. The temperature in the room dropped. And then I went for the throat. I reached into the briefcase and pulled out a small, square envelope, Vogue's formal invitation to feature me in an upcoming spotlight on women in law. I didn't need to say anything. I just placed it on the table, next to the copy of the fraud report, like punctuation. My name, I said, was never the problem. Yours was. Loretta's jaw tensed. You think this makes you righteous? No, I said. It makes me documented. The board began to murmur. Phones buzzed. Someone had leaked already.
Good.
Across the glass wall, I saw reporters gathering outside.
Perfect.
I stood slowly, letting my chair echo as it slid back against the marble. I'll leave you to sort through your legacy, I said. Mine just got published. Outside, the cameras clicked like applause. I didn't stop for them, but I didn't shy from them either. My phone buzzed. A text from Raina. Stock down 14%. First sponsor pulled. Congratulations, assassin. I allowed myself one deep breath. Then I turned and walked straight through the chaos. Some promises are carved in stone. Others are forged in fire. The room was still spinning from the fallout. 3 news cycles in, and Sabine's name had already become synonymous with embezzlement. Loretta was unavailable for comment. The foundation's website had vanished. Their board issued a statement full of phrases like deeply troubled and pending legal review. And me? I was back in court, robe on, gavel steady, pretending none of it changed the way my pulse ticked like a countdown. But the moment I stepped outside the courthouse, the mask cracked. Raina was waiting near the curb, sunglasses on, phone pressed to her ear. She wants to meet, she said without looking up. I didn't ask who. Sabine, she confirmed. Tonight. Rooftop bar. Private booth. No press.
Of course not, I said.
Snakes don't bring witnesses. Just venom. Raina lowered her glasses. You don't have to go. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to ignore it. Let her spin. Let her rot. But another part of me, the part they'd tried to silence years ago, knew this wasn't about closure. It was about control. I'm going, I said. The rooftop bar sat on the 20th floor of a boutique hotel favored by Charleston's political elite. It smelled like polished wood and generational wealth. The glass walls wrapped around the terrace like a cage made of clarity. Sabine was already there, leaning against the railing, the skyline behind her like a throne she hadn't earned. She turned when she saw me, all white again. This time, a tailored blazer over matching slacks. Business casual for royalty in freefall. You've made quite the name for yourself, she said, swirling her drink. I didn't sit. Correction, I replied. I reclaimed mine. You tried to burn it. She smiled tightly, sipping something pink she wouldn't finish. I was protecting what was left of us, she said. You don't get to act shocked. You walked away. I stepped closer. My heels struck the wood like punctuation. You stood beside Jameson while he humiliated me. You said nothing when Mom forged me out of the trust. You wore white to my wedding. Her eyes flickered. I didn't stop. So don't pretend to be the wounded one now. She turned back toward the city, lips pressed into a line. You think you've won, she said. I think I survived, I answered. And now I'm cleaning up your mess. Her voice sharpened. You want a truce?
No, I said.
I want the truth. I want everything you stole returned. And I want the foundation that helped bury me leveled. She lifted her drink, but didn't sip. The condensation on the glass ran like sweat from her fingers. You think Dad would have wanted this? I moved closer, speaking low enough for only her to hear. I know exactly what he wanted. He left it in writing. Sabine said nothing for a long time. Then her lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. You're not the only one who kept files. And just like that, the music faded. The buzz of the city dropped into the background. Her threat hovered between us, heavy and unfinished. I held her gaze for one more beat. Then I turned and walked away. Not out of fear, out of strategy. Let her show her hand. Let her overplay it. Let her leak it wrong. Because I'd already made my vow.
And it wasn't to them.
It was to me. That night, I returned home to find Raina waiting at my kitchen counter, wine glass in hand. Well, she asked. She's hiding more, I said, slipping off my jacket. But she's slipping. Do we go after it?
Not yet, I said.
We let her move first. Then we end it. Raina smiled slightly. You sound like your father. I said nothing. Instead, I walked into my office and opened the drawer I hadn't touched since his funeral. Inside was a single envelope. My name.
His handwriting.
Slanted.
Steady.
Final. I opened it. If you're reading this, they've done what I feared. I'm sorry I didn't stop them sooner. But you will. You were born with something they can't fake, conviction. Never forget who you are, even when they pretend not to know your name. The paper smelled faintly of cedar. I pressed it flat on my desk and picked up a pen. No hesitation. I wasn't just filing against people anymore. I was filing against everything they'd built. Have you ever realized that staying quiet only served their version of the story? That the only way to heal was to speak, to fight, to make them see? If you've ever stood at that crossroads, leave a comment number 9 below. Let's see what happens when I choose fire over silence. The Winter Foundation. And every lie it was wrapped in. Outside, the wind rose against the windows. But in my hands, only one sound mattered. Ink hitting paper. The beginning of the end. It wasn't the thunder that woke me. It was the silence before it. That eerie stillness just before the sky breaks. I stood by the window of my study, watching Charleston sleep beneath a heavy gray sky. My speech sat on the desk, untouched. I'd written it, rewritten it, burned it. What I needed to say wasn't on paper. It was buried in years of silence and scars. I took a breath.
Slow.
Deliberate. Today was no longer about proving them wrong. It was about proving I never needed their permission to begin with. The day I filed the motion against the Winter Foundation, the entire city seemed to hold its breath. Maya had reviewed every page twice. Raina triple-checked the media strategy. The truth wasn't coming. It had already arrived, tucked into an official complaint stamped and sealed by the South Carolina Judicial Commission. Count 1. Misappropriation of charitable funds. Count 2. Fraudulent misrepresentation. Count 3. Forgery and concealment. And just beneath that header sat the names: Loretta Winter, Sabine Winter, and multiple board members currently under investigation. No more shadow games. No more whispered betrayal. This time, it was on record. By noon, my inbox was a war zone. Some messages came from reporters, others from victims. But the ones that struck deepest were from former colleagues, judges who had stayed silent 5 years ago. They didn't apologize. They acknowledged. There was always something wrong, one wrote. You just had the courage to face it. I didn't need their redemption. I already had mine. But their words built momentum, and momentum became avalanche. The press conference took place 3 days later, in a modest room inside the Charleston Civic Hall. No chandeliers, no staged portraits, just microphones, muted carpet, and a podium I didn't lean on. As I stepped up, the lights from a dozen cameras lit the stage in harsh white angles. The soft pop of flashes clicked like rainfall. Reporters packed the aisles shoulder to shoulder, their phones and recorders pointed at me like courtroom evidence. I wore the same black suit I wore the day I passed the bar. Lady Justice pendant resting against my collarbone. I didn't open with fury. I opened with facts. "This isn't about money," I said, voice steady but clear. "It's about a family that thought its name was too precious to be held accountable. It's about the silence they used as a weapon, and the people they tried to erase to protect an illusion." I read excerpts from the motion, displayed redacted bank transfers, introduced whistleblower statements, leaked internal board memos. And then I paused, held the moment, let the weight settle across the room like a gavel strike. "They taught me silence," I said, "and I used it to build something stronger. A voice, a ruling, a reckoning." The applause didn't come instantly. It came in waves, first a few claps, then the roar. Backstage, Raina handed me a small envelope, gold trim, heavy stock. My name engraved in clean serif font. "What's this?" I asked, pulse still thudding in my ears. "Open it." Inside, an official offer. Federal judgeship. Second Circuit. Washington, D.C. No strings. No back doors. No family name attached. Only mine. I stood there, breath caught, blinking back the full weight of what I'd just done. And what came next? Later that evening, I returned to the Winter Estate. Not to forgive, not to gloat, to finish. Loretta was in the solarium, trimming orchids that had already begun to wilt. She looked up as I entered, clippers poised midair. "You're not welcome here," she said quietly. "I wasn't invited 5 years ago either," I replied. She set the clippers down. "Is this how you celebrate? With threats and cameras?" "This is how I rebuild," I said. "With truth. With accountability. With names on documents that don't disappear when someone's inconvenient." Her lips thinned. "Sabine's gone," she muttered. "Vanished 2 days ago." "She always was good at disappearing," I said. "But money trails don't vanish. Paper leaves footprints." Loretta shook her head slightly, as if trying to dismiss the moment. "I hope you're proud." I leaned in, voice low and steady. "I'm not proud of the wreckage. I'm proud I crawled out of it and made them see who put me there."
She didn't speak.
But her eyes, always cold, shimmered with something that looked suspiciously like fear. I turned and walked out. The heavy front door clicked shut behind me like a final verdict slamming into place. That night, I signed the acceptance letter, and I didn't shake. But just before turning out the lights, I glanced at my inbox again. A flood of headlines, comment threads, legal forums. She did it. Judge Marin just burned down the dynasty. Finally, someone said the quiet part out loud. One comment stood out, sitting quietly among the noise. "Real justice isn't clean. It scorches." I smiled, because they were right. This wasn't the end. It was ignition. I finally stood in a world I built on my own terms, unafraid, untethered, and no longer carrying the weight of anyone else's silence. My name was no longer something they could tarnish. It was something I had burned clean and carved into legacy. Sometimes, justice doesn't arrive in robes and gavels. Sometimes, it rises in the quiet resilience of someone who refused to stay buried. When you are betrayed by those who are meant to love you, the greatest act of power is choosing to love yourself enough to fight back with truth. Have you ever been cast aside by people who claim to protect you? What would you have done if your own family tried to erase your name? Share your story in the comments. I read every one, and you're not alone. And if stories of truth, justice, and personal reckoning move you, stick around. This is only the beginning.